All right, yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome in special edition executive decisions. I know we are on entering to the month of September, the beginning of September, and obviously football season is here now. But still, I wanted to get a chance to chop it up, talk some hoops. A lot of stuff going on in the NBA right now. So who better than my man from the most glorious place on the face of the earth in Harlem, New York, my good brother, Bally Sports senior NBA insider, my man Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. Scoop, what up with you?
My brother, what's good with you? I'm all right. How are you?
Ain't nothing much. It's over here chilling, trying to pick it up and put it down. Obviously, we got a little bit before we get to the upcoming NBA season, but just been, thirsty for some basketball talk. And I wanted to chop it up. And I was like, well, who better than Scoop? Because he got the inside on the inside, right? So I guess the biggest story right now in the NBA offseason is the James Harden saga. I remember last year waking up, checking my phone, and reading that Harden opted out. And I was like, why did he opt out? He's never going to get that money again. And then this year I wake up and I read Harden's opting in. And I thought, man, Philadelphia is not going to want to pay him that money. Now everything unravels. How does this Harden situation come to an end?
Well, a couple things. One, I think anytime you have a superstar or a star, however which way you group James, come out and say that the team president is a liar, it's a lot of layers. And then when you investigate it, it's he said something else. It wasn't about this. It wasn't about that. It's a lot of he said, she said, unsubstantiated things from people that I have spoken with. There seems to have been some dialogue or some conversation. And, ultimately you've seen things in the past where the Joe Smith saga was what it was. And, teams are fine. So guys are a lot more careful in certain communication and conversations that you have. And you read that however which way you want. But the fact of the matter remains that he still is a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. And, it's not like the NFL where you don't show up and you kind of have that leverage. So I think in this instance with James, I think where it reminds me of Ben Simmons is you show up to camp and you kind of figure out those things through playing and what more. And one of two things could happen. He and his teammates get along, they start winning, you kind of forget it, or he shows up, plays himself into a groove, and he still voices that he wants out. The Clippers are the destination that he does want to go to. And I'll say that, from the conversations that I've had across the league, that the Clippers' apprehension is and them not wanting to give up Terrence Mann. Terrence does like Los Angeles, the Clippers specifically. I think in this instance, before when Paul George was the de facto point guard, and at points he was switched over at different positions between positions 1 through 4, like that chemistry is an interesting factor. The other factor I think for Philadelphia is the fact that they actually have a chance to win in the Eastern Conference, and I think winning does cure all. I do think that Philadelphia does have a chance like anybody else, and maybe this is the fire they needed to go into the season to make this happen. So I think the best course of action is to show up to training camp. I'm not sure whether James will, but I do know that they have a chance to go deep in the playoffs.
I like Nick Nurse. I think Nick Nurse is one of the best head coaches in the NBA, and I know they don't want to bring him into a situation because let me tell you something: nobody can burn something down like a disgruntled NBA star.
I agree. I mean, I think you look at Brooklyn as a prime example, where just all of the things that were beyond the Nets' and Kyrie Irving and James Harden and Kevin Durant's control, they all happened to them. The pandemic that is COVID, the mandates that were New York City, and how just prior to all of those things and the mandates happening, they were very close to going to the finals that year. Ultimately, the Milwaukee Bucks were the eventual champions. But imagine a world where COVID and even a hamstring issue or his ankle weren't an issue. We might be having a different conversation about that team. But unfortunately, those forces were what they are, and it dismantled what the Nets what many thought could be that potential championship team.
So let's talk about the other offseason situation this year. And I find this one real interesting because I heard one guy, NBA guy that I trust, say that the Damian Lillard situation is really down to two teams. It's Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat, right? And Philadelphia and obviously the Trailblazers are intrigued with Philadelphia because Tyrese Maxey is in the package, and Maxey better player obviously than Tyler Hero. Then I heard our brother Stephen A say Tyrese Maxey is not a part of any deal to get Damian Lillard. Why hasn't the Damian Lillard deal been done yet? And is Miami the obvious place?
I don't know that those two teams are the only two teams.
Okay.
I think that as the season progresses, what people want and expectations change. I think that in the instance of the Miami Heat, that's the preferred team that Lillard wants to go to. But I'll tell you what, I do think the New Orleans Pelicans have a lot of assets that they could offer the Portland Trailblazers. I do think that the Philadelphia 76ers with Tyrese Maxey would make sense, but I also think that for Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers, they tabled conversations for his extension till later on, but I do think that he has found a groove and has found a home in Philadelphia. And from conversations that I've had with Tyrese over the last year, he's spoken reverently just about how much James Harden has made him a better basketball player. So sometimes, it's so close to the season when you mess with chemistry like that, that could have a residual effect later on. To me, Miami makes all the sense in the world, but so do some other teams like the Pelicans. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it's just two teams. And again, I think expectations can change over time.
That's interesting right there. But like to hit at the Pelicans or a team that can get involved in. Let's transition to the Pelicans. Once again, NBA schedule comes out a couple weeks ago, loaded with New Orleans Pelicans primetime game, the one where Ja comes back. They got an early season matchup with the Grizzlies. Keep putting this team on primetime, and Zion Williamson is not playing. Now, he was all the talk this NBA offseason for some off the court stuff. And, I really didn't like the way that went down. I think that, revenge porn is a thing. And, if people were making fun of the brother and stuff like that, he's a young man, you know what I'm saying? And stuff like this can happen. Nonetheless, sure, he's got to get on the basketball court. You know what I'm saying? Where is he at? The first question is, where is he at? And then I've got something else I want to ask you.
Well, where is he?
As far as getting back on the court.
I think he's in a process of just figuring things out. I know that he has been focusing on his diet and his nutrition a lot. And I think I'll add this. I had a conversation with John Sally recently just about off-court issues. Off-court issues become on-court issues because they're product of your overall being. And when they become newsworthy, they become a distraction. But I'll add this. He's 22, 23 years old. And he still has a lot of left of basketball to play if he works this right. And even when you look at Joesl Embiid, for example, he came into the league and had dealt with some ankle or foot issues. It took him a while before he kind of got into a groove. And you're talking about somebody who is finally named an MVP and has been mentioned in the MVP candidate conversations for some time. And you see how that's panned out. So different body type than Embiid, different position than Embiid. But, Zion is somebody that I am cheering for. And I'd like to see get on the right ship. So to me, if there's all this outside noise discussing things that have nothing to do with basketball, plus your fitness and more, I'm using that as bulletin board material, and I'm going extra harder to make sure that I'm in a position to be successful and dominant, like a Joesl Embiid ultimately has become after the setbacks beginning in his career.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely rooting for Zion as well. You know what I'm saying? Down here in the Carolinas, everybody's a Zion fan. You see a Ja jersey, a Zion jersey all over the place. There's credible people that have said that maybe something else is going on with Zion. and maybe these are not really injuries. You hear anything about that ever?
You hear it. The one thing that is interesting is, the connection that he has to Teresa Weatherspoon. And, she's no longer an assistant coach with the New Orleans Pelicans. And, she's definitely a sounding board for Zion. But, I think that for Zion, the issue with New Orleans, I think what he was drafted into and what the Pelicans have become are two different things.
Okay.
And so now when you look at this Pelicans team with a Brandon Ingram and a CJ McCollum, like, it's an attractive destination. So those are things that you've heard throughout the years when the Pelicans, they were still figuring out you're talking about the Drew Holiday, Lonzo Ball, Zion Williamson Pelicans, not the CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram added team. So I definitely think that those are things that you've heard in the past. As of now, the last time I spent some time with Zion was earlier this year. And, he shared with me that, he does enjoy his time with the Pelicans and that, he's taking it a day at a time and just trying to improve and get right. So I'm going to take him at his word.
So as a dude that grew up in New York and may or may not at some point rooted for the New York Knicks in their last 30 years of futility, good to see them starting to get back on track now. But every time a major free agent was coming up, the Knicks were trying to get ducks in the row to go after this guy and that guy and LeBron and Carmelo. And for the most part, it's supposed to be Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Zion Williamson. That was the big thing. What was about 3 or 4 years ago? Now it's starting to be chirps about Joel Embiid, and even more recently, chirps about Giannis potentially being the next players that Knicks fans get lathered up for. Any truth to that, or do you think it's just, it is what it is, Knicks fans? Grow your team organically and see how far you can get.
Well, the one thing I'll say about the Knicks now versus maybe, I'll say even the last 2 to 5 years is you got to win for it to be an attractive destination. And I think that I personally think that the bad luck or the perception of the Knicks of what it was began when you traded Patrick Ewing to the Seattle Supersonics, and over the years, Allen Houston and the way I feel like I'm glad that they kept him in the front office, but when you look at the Knicks and you look at them trying to find ways to make things happen, it just was it was like, okay, are we going to live off of what happened in the 90s and the Mason era, the Ewing era, Charlie Ward? Are we going to still live off the 4-point play? And a crazy thing happened. They after the Melo and Amari Stoudemire experiment, and then Charles C. Billups coming in briefly and then figuring things out, and then you thought you were going to get KD and you didn't. The crazy thing happened. Jalen Brunson came in and really made Knicks fans really appreciate Knicks nostalgia of winning. And anytime the Knicks are in the playoffs, it's great for the league. It's good things happen, and it just gives you, in America we have the 13 colonies. And in the NBA, you have the original teams, being the Sixers, the Knicks, the Celtics, the Lakers, and more. And anytime you have original teams like that it's great for the league. And I think that what's happening is you got guys that want to be there, and they're attracting other guys who want to be there. But at first, you got to win, and that's what the Knicks are doing. And I think that in answer to your question about Giannis, I mean, these are things that I was hearing when we were all on lockdown in 2020, the height of the pandemic. Giannis had a meeting with the Bucks back in 2020, and he gave a list of players that he was interested in playing with, and some of those names did include Chris Paul, James Harden, and others. And after that happened, he got the extension, and then they won a championship. And so now Budenholzer is gone. You've got Adrian Griffin as the head coach, and now he has another brother that plays for the team.
On the team now.
Ultimately, I think for the Bucks, I think those are conversations that are happening. But also, the Lakers was a topic of conversation in 2019. Back when the Lakers were formulating their next moves with who they were going to partner LeBron with. Anthony Davis was always in the cards. Kawhi was one of those names. Kevin Durant at one point was a person of interest. And, there are some people who I have spoken with that believe, that Jason Kidd as an assistant coach there at the time and his relationship with Giannis could lure Giannis there. Of course, now Giannis still is with the Bucks and Jason Kidd now, head coach with the Dallas Mavericks. But, you hear these conversations all the time, specifically to your question about Joel Embiid in the Knicks. That was something that I was hearing 2019, 2020. A very high-ranking official in the NBA had shared that with me that, this was, of course, when Joel and Ben Simmons were still teammates in Philadelphia at the time. And they shared with me that they saw a world where the Knicks could be a player. So hearing this now, it's like, okay, this does kind of make sense. Will it happen? That's a different conversation, and we'll see.
So, we got a couple things, and then I'm gonna get you up out of here. Gilbert Arenas' podcast. He had Trae Young on, and they kind of was talking about the topic of USA basketball and how the sneaker companies, mainly Nike, obviously, Gilbert and Young, both players under Adidas. Do you think there's any credence to USA basketball being run by Nike? And is Trae Young somebody that USA basketball would consider? Because when you've been in the league 5 years and you've gotten rid of it's 2 coaches now, I would think that is preceding Young almost. Like Young did this heel turn that's not really benefiting him.
I think the bigger issue, so I'm going to answer every single question you asked, but I'll start by saying, one, I think the Atlanta Hawks were successful as a young team very early. And now they're kind of in a conversation with other young teams like Oklahoma, like Minnesota, and I think even Milwaukee was came out of nowhere to some people, like a young team that was successful early in their existence. And now it's like, okay, so what's next, right? So I think in the NBA over the last 2-3 years, you've seen even more point guards being praised than just Trae Young. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a budding star.
Yeah.
But if you were paying attention to when he was on the Clippers, you knew he was nice. Him going to Oklahoma just really gave him a bigger lens, a bigger platform. So
more minutes.
Exactly. So I think we're just spoiled with good basketball players right now. Like everybody has in the NBA has at least one. All 30 teams have at least one star. Literally, you could pick one star from each team and they could be all stars. Like I just think we're at that point, and I think Trae Young is just. I think he's there, but I think the Hawks are not in the national perspective, not on the radar of maybe of other people, like say other teams. I don't even want to name names or name teams.
Yeah, I feel you.
On the radar. So I think so to kind of answer your line of questioning, do I think Trae Young deserves to be on that team? Yes. Do I think that there's politics involved in selecting? Yes. Do I think the coach switching has something to do with it? Maybe, but I also think that Nate McMillan was as responsible for the Atlanta Hawks' success as Trae Young was. And that season when they went to the playoffs and they beat the Knicks in round 1 and then they went to the conference finals, they got rid of the coach that was in earlier that year.
Yeah, Lloyd Pierce got fired. Then Nate McMillan went 35-3 or something crazy down the stretch.
And the very thing that has been reported that Trae complained about was the thing that made them successful. Him being hard on them and them playing defense ad nauseum is what got them to the conference finals.
Yeah.
Like Trae Young was this close to going to the NBA finals.
Yeah.
At a very, very young point in the Hawks' tenure. And I mean, there are some other factors. I spent about 10 days with the Atlanta Hawks this season, and that team dealt with a lot of injuries the following year, the last year and a half. They traded one of the guys that was responsible for getting him there, and he had to change his shot. So there's a lot that goes into it. Do I think that the sneaker aspect of it plays a part? There's a reason why people say checks over stripes. But then you look at other guys who were on that team. I mean, Bobby Porter wears Anta, and he's not a pain in the butt.
Yeah, and that makes interesting. Anthony Edwards, probably the star of the team, is also, if I'm not mistaken, Edwards is an Adidas guy as well.
He's an Adidas guy, so I think there's a lot. There's a lot there. I just think that. I just think that those selection processes for those teams are so stringent that he didn't make the cut. But his career is still young. He still could make the cut.
Yeah, no doubt. Finally, I want to talk about the commissioner, Adam Silver. I've always been, probably for the past decade or so, have said that Adam Silver was the smartest guy in sports. He was a guy that was first with a lot of the fantasy stuff. He was innovative with sports betting and social media. But then around 2020, it seems like things started to change. Playing the day of the death of Kobe Bryant, I think it's something that he would change. You had good and bad reviews about the bubble, right? The play-in tournament has been, discussed in length. Now you add the in-season tournament. You still have load management being an issue. It seems like it's a lot of people that it's people that don't like. They think that he was too lenient on Ja Morant. And it seems as if the thought process or the way people think about Adam Silver is starting to change. I know you talk to a lot of executives and people in higher up NBA circles. Are they satisfied with the job that Silver's doing?
Yeah, I think they're satisfied with the job he's doing. I think the complaints about the play-in tournament or the in-season tournament are a result of just the advancement of the game. I think the NBA has become a global game, and in some aspects, that play-in or in-season tournament is like the NBA wanting to be FIFA, even with the advertisements on the jerseys and taking the logo off the shoulder and putting it on the back. I'm an NBA purist. I do appreciate the shoulder logos as opposed to the back, but it's business and it's an advancement of business and nothing stays the same. I think for Adam Silver specifically, he came in hot. I mean, he came in, he replaced David Stern. Was put on the floor and went 10 for 10 in the first half. And, he also had big shoes to fill because he replaced a person who was benefiting off of the golden era of basketball with guys like Michael Jordan and his cohorts playing. But not to take anything, or rather, I can't take anything from Adam Silver because Adam Silver was right there with him. I mean, Adam Silver was the second in command and was responsible for contracts related to NBA Jam. He executive produced Michael Jordan's "Come Fly with Me," and was a student of the game and was growing with the league as the second in command as he was young and consuming it as well. I just think that the circumstances like COVID, like Ja Morant, like the bubble were what they were. And it's in a job that you have, everybody's not going to like you. He just benefited from being well liked from the beginning. And life is about balance. If everybody likes you all the time, do they just like you? Or are you not doing their job? Are you doing things to be liked? So I think in life, you got to have people who like you and people who hate you because it keeps you balanced.
It seems like Ice Cube's not a big fan right now.
Yeah, but he's also a competitor.
You're about to say he's a competitor. So I kind of understand it. You know what I'm saying? He wants to be looked at as a partner, but they've deemed him a competitor, and they kind of, as a business, have the right to do that.
I mean, you think about it, right? You and I are both fans of hip hop and consumers of hip hop and have worked adjacent to hip hop. 50 Cent didn't like Ja Rule, but then he ended up singing hooks just like Ja Rule.
Exactly. There you go.
So it's like, okay, do you dislike Adam Silver because you're in a similar position as him, or do you really dislike him? So that's, to me, that's very subjective. But I think that when you look at Adam Silver and you look at, listen, I could be critical of Adam Silver, but I also appreciate that out of me having worked from 97 around the NBA since 1997 and now, Adam Silver was more accessible to me than David Stern was. And also, Adam Silver, to me, I think he's in a position where the NBA was a well-oiled machine. All he has to do is turn the lights on, and they're fine. And I think that the NBA was ahead of the curve on the social media portion of it. Like, you look at even like media rights and clips and things of that sort. Like, I remember NFL being very stringent. You can't use this, you can't use that. The NBA welcomed,
yes, they did,
clips and things like that being used because it was free advertisement. To me, I think that was ingenious. It's the reason why you and I can continue to live, and we don't just have to depend on TV. We can depend on digital space. I think the NBA was very forward with that. I think even the way that I think he won people over, the way that he handled the Donald Sterling.
That was, and if you talk to him, he would say that was the biggest moment of his career, is when he came in and immediately, see, what I like about what he did with Donald Sterling is he made a decision. He was swift. He made a decision. He showed leadership attributes, and he went with it. Before I let you out of here, the television thing, is that an issue? The Super Bowl, $113 million. The top NBA Finals game, $13 million. The women's NCAA tournament basketball final, $10 million. Does the NBA have a television problem?
Yeah, because we have a cord cutting problem.
That's what I don't feel like people are consuming the sport less. The numbers are down, I think, because of what you said. Yeah, so I'm correct in that.
Yeah, I think we're in a space in 2023 going into 2024 where we were in 98, 99 when we had a not people not buying CD problem. And everybody was going on Napster, LimeWire, Nutella, and all those other places to download. How do you regulate that? The end result was now Apple Music, Spotify, and many of those other things. Like, we're in the Wild Wild West right now. Now is the time to get your name and things out there by aligning yourself with clipping and cutting and more. But people are more looking, and that's from a content creator perspective, from a consumer perspective. People are looking at highlights on Instagram. People are looking at highlights on TikTok. People are looking at news on Twitter. TV, the Sports Center, or some of those other shows are on TVs in the gyms and every place else, but people are glancing and leaving. Like, I think we, in addition to having a TV problem, we have an attention span problem.
How about that? I can't put up a video on here over 3 minutes. That, you know what I'm saying? Is people really take their content in much quicker fashion. I'm a little bit older guy. I don't mind. I'm gonna order the league pass and sit down here from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock and be watching stuff.
They don't make them like you anymore.
That's what I try to tell them, bro, but they ain't listening. My man, Scoop B, Brandon Robinson, really appreciate your time, my brother. You do excellent work. NBA insider, senior insider over there at Bally Sports. And, every time I see you on social media, I'm watching the game, and I'm like, yo, we got my man Scoop B sitting right in the damn middle on the first row. My man, you doing your thing, man. Definitely, you should be proud, and definitely good to see you doing your thing, and I appreciate your time.
Brother, thank you for the opportunity to be myself. Make sure you guys also check out the Scoop B Radio podcast. on those streaming platforms, and check out my work through Bovada as well, through my show there, Bovada Sports Betting, called Scoopy Talks, weekly all over social media. And we're in the LA Swimwear, brother. Thank you for your time and for having me, and you keep excelling as well.
For School B, Brandon Robinson, Corey Parson, the Fantasy Executive. We out.